Horizon Zero Dawn is getting a remaster, adding it to the pile of effectively every single first-party Sony game since the PS3, except for Bloodborne. Sorry for your loss. I am going to share an unpopular opinion. I like remasters, especially older ones, and I don't really care if they want to make remasters even for PS4 games. It means nothing to me like any other game. If I don't like it, I just won't buy it. And that means actual remasters, since many confuse a remaster with a remake. A remaster is basically just the original game touched up, generally just the visuals and sound, and sometimes given some unwanted censorship to boot. For the most part, the game will look and feel like the original game, just in higher resolution. A remake is the game remade from the ground up, and can range from very alike, such as the Demon's Souls remake, which had the same levels and monsters but completely new visuals and smoother gameplay, to a completely new interpretation of the original game, such as Trials of Mana taking the story abilities level layout and turning it from an isometric hack and slash into a 3D ARPG, or the most extreme, making a completely different game, with different story, dialogues, and novel personalities and combat systems. Final Fantasy VII Remake is the best of this, playing completely differently, hitting totally different story beats, letting you get to know characters way more, and both massively enhancing certain areas, such as greatly lengthening the Midgar segment, while cutting down on other areas. A remake is a full new game, like how different Robin Hood or Three Musketeer movies use the same source material, but are all a different experience. Remasters are much more lazy, in some cases even making games worse, removing or diluting textures, taking out parts deemed problematic by modern woke Karens. Sony is in love with remasters. The problem is not that Sony has a bunch of remasters, and keeps remastering their big selling games, is that it seems like that's the only thing they're doing. It's easy to understand why. It's obviously far cheaper than making a whole new game. It creates a big chunk of easy profit, and it helps to fill out the library. But it's a band-aid to all the issues they have behind the scenes. Their games are being too expensive to make as full-on mismanagement, and massive, bloated studios full of useless departments, and DEI committees that suck up cash and provide zero value. It's how we got Concord, a $250 million to potentially $400 million game that died in 2 weeks. Sony cannot survive off remasters forever. They can't even survive solely off sequels. Console sales lose the money. They make money mainly off of game and game add-on, and it is big games with plenty of microtransactions that make the most money. That much should be fairly common knowledge. So there is an obvious reason why Sony recently said they needed to make a bunch of live service games. Getting their own FIFA, Madden, Minecraft, Roblox, or Fortnite would give them more profit each year than their entire library of Spider-Mans, Uncharted, Last of Us, and God of Wars combined over their entire history. But they might never get that live service miracle, so they have to make much more in their library, or nobody will buy the console, and thus be in the PSN store where they make their profits. At some point, you need a game to remaster in order to release a remaster. They're already pushing their luck doing remasters of PS4 games, but even the most compliant consumer is going to balk at remasters of current-gen games. Now, they do have plenty of beloved older titles, games like Legend of Dragoon, Soul Reaver, Dark Cloud, Jak and Daxter, Infamous, to revitalize, but there's still a limit. They need new games. Helldivers, Stellar Blade, Returnal, Astrobot have shown there's room for successes. Right now, they are hitting the stride of releases that they should have had at generation launch. 2024 has been a good year for games on the console, but it has really been the only good year for PS5 gamers. PlayStation can still fail. They did not win the console war. Xbox lost the console war on their own. Stuff like Concord is how Sony can manage to lose a console war, even if they're now the only participant. And when they create toxic spaces where everyone is afraid to say internally that the game is terrible, because the DEI climate will ensure that if they do, their career in the games industry is completely over. DEI is a form of systemic discrimination, and religious puritanism is like ultra-Scientology. The mainstream was gleeful to dunk on Scientology, but they're terrified of DEI. So consider how powerful the woke religion is. And it is embedded in the PlayStation culture, and it is killing their ability to make games. Outside studios that are not fully impregnated by their ideology have managed to make major hits, but all of their major studios combined can't even make a single game a year, which is utterly pathetic. Nintendo, meanwhile, is releasing a new game every other month, and most of them are large hits without major controversies. And most importantly, their major IPs are all in good standing, well beloved, and not hating on the fans that have supported it for decades. You will notice Echoes of Wisdom, which stars Princess Zelda, does not have her beating Link to death with a golf club. Sony is not creating new IPs, they're not reviving their wealth of long dead but fondly remembered older IPs, and their current major IPs are almost all now full of controversies and falling into the DEI pitfall of attacking the non-believers, a road that has destroyed Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, 007 and more. This damages each future release, reduces the number of eager fans for a sequel, and eventually does break it, because the DEI modern audience is only there to break the toys. And the built-in fan base is only there to enjoy the toys when they're not broken. So after the toy is broken, you end up with nobody from either audience interested in it. Sony needs to look at and learn from Stellar Blade, Helldivers 2, Wukong, Palworld, and other games that focus on being good games. They need to give up on trying to wage an ideological war against their own consumers. They need to create and foster games with promise, even if they don't immediately become billion-dollar franchises. They need games like Days Gone or Hi-Fi Rush, not to crush them. Because even if they want to go with the remaster strategy, you still need something to remaster. Not every game is Skyrim with millions willing to buy it again every other year. If Sony doesn't make new games or support stuff like Stellar Blade to do what made them successful, rather than trying to change them due to some sort of woke ideology behind the scenes, there's more than enough room for both Sony and Microsoft to lose the console war together.